Hello, today we're starting a new lesson focusing on angles formed by parallel lines cut by transversals. So there's a lot of vocabulary there. There's a lot of vocabulary in the work. But I actually think past the vocabulary, the work is pretty straightforward. So we'll see what you think. But for the warm-up, we're looking at vertical angles. So this is a review of what we've been doing. I'll read the question for you, make sure you understand the first blank, and then have you pause the video to complete the warm-up. So it says, find the value of x in my picture here. And then the thing to the right says the measure of angle ABD. So this is angle ABD is blank, since the measure of angle ABD and CBE, which is this one, since those angles are vertical angles, which are congruent. Now find x. So for vertical angles, if this is 64 degrees, this is also 64 degrees. The measure of angle ABD needs to be 64 degrees because they're vertical angles, which means they have the same measures. They are congruent. Thus, we can set up the equation 9x minus 8 equals 64 in order to solve for x. Okay, so pause the video, go ahead and do that. Okay, so you should have gotten x equals 8. So we had 9x minus 8. How do we undo subtracting 8? We add 8, so I add that on both sides of my equation. Okay, then I pull down my 9x. I get 9x equals 72, and then since I have x times 9, I undo multiplying by 9 by dividing by 9, and you end up with x equals 8. Let's just go back to our original problem and make sure we understand what that means. So I was told that the measure of this angle was 9x minus 8. And I just found that x equals 8. So I can substitute in 8 for x. Okay, then I have 9 times 8, that's 72. And 72 minus 8 equals 64. Thus, this equals 64 degrees, as it should, because these are vertical angles, and vertical angles are congruent, right? They're congruent, so the measure is going to be the same. Okay, so we'll kind of see vertical angles in what we're doing today and tomorrow, but it's not as much the focus. Okay, now we're getting into key vocabulary for today. So, the general idea. It's a lot of vocabulary, but the vocabulary isn't super important to the idea, so I don't want you to get overwhelmed by the vocabulary, so you don't let yourself get the general idea, because the general idea, I think, is pretty manageable. So, we have parallel lines. These are parallel lines, which are lines that will never cross, always the same distance apart, that are cut by a transversal. So parallel lines, they're cut by this other line that we call a transversal. All it means is a line that's crossing parallel lines. Okay, and when we do that, lots of different angles are formed, and there are lots of names for what those angles are. So we have corresponding angles. Those are angles like we have here, 1 and 2, A and C, H and F, 3 and 4. They're angles that are kind of on like the same spot if you just were to slide the line up. So they're on the same side, and then they're both, like in this case, they're both above the parallel line. Those are corresponding. They're always going to be the same. Okay, then we have alternate interior angles. So again, fancy vocabulary, meaning isn't super hard though. Alternate interior angles are the interior is here, it's in between the two lines, and alternate means they're on opposite sides of the transversal. Opposite sides of the transversal. So this angle and this angle are alternate interior angles because they're inside the two parallel lines, and they're on opposite sides of our transversal. And then this angle and this angle would be a second set of alternate interior angles. Then there's the vocabulary word alternate exterior angles. Again, basically the same concept. We're on the exterior this time, outside of the parallel lines. And we have this goes with this angle. Okay, because they're on alternate or opposite sides. And they're outside parallel lines. And then we'd have this one and this one, which are also alternate exterior angles. So those are vocabulary words. You'll see them. They're not the most important words, really. You'll see them again in high school for sure. What's more important is that you can use the concepts of them. Okay, and then finally we have vertical angles, which is what we did in our warm-up, right? We know the vertical angles. We've already learned that. Vertical angles are across from each other. So, for example, I'll go over here now. Angle A and angle G, those are vertical angles. And we conclude, first blank, is that all of those are congruent, which means they have the same measure. So let's think about what that means. So here I have the measure of angle A. That, whatever that is, that's going to be equal to the measure of angle G, because they're congruent. So if this is 30 degrees, this is 30 degrees. Okay, corresponding angles are also congruent. So what corresponds with angle A? It's going to be angle C. So that means angle C and angle A are also the same. The measure of them are the same. They are congruent. We could go back to vertical angles. What's a vertical angle with C? It's E. So that means, again, those are congruent. So whatever angle A is, let's say it's 30 degrees. G is also 30 degrees. C is also 30 degrees. E is also 30 degrees. They're all the same. Okay, and then we can basically do the same thing with our other set of angles. So here I have H and B. H and B are vertical angles. So the measure of angle B is equal to the measure of angle H, because they're vertical. They're the same, they're congruent. What's a corresponding angle with H? That's going to be F. So those are congruent. That's going to be the same. What's a vertical angle of F? D. So let's say H is 40 degrees. Then B is also 40 degrees, F is also 40 degrees, and D is also 40 degrees. So all of those angles are the same. The measure is the same. And what you'll see, what happened naturally in there, is that we had alternating interior angles, B and F. Those are the same. G and C, those are the same. And alternate exterior angles, A and E, those are congruent. Those are the same. And H and D, those are congruent. Those are the same. Those are all the same. Okay, they all have the same measure. And then the last thing we need to know about this, what happens when we cut parallel lines by transversal, is a relationship between these four and these four. Well, they are supplementary. We can see angle A and angle B right here. Those form a straight line. So if they form a straight line, they are supplementary. They sum to 180 degrees since they form a straight line or a straight angle. So that would mean the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B is equal to 180 degrees. Okay, and we can use that in lots of different ways. We can be told A then and figure out every other value, which is pretty cool. If we were told A was 120 degrees, I would immediately know what G was. It was 120. C was, it's 120. E was, it's 120. And then I can do a little bit of work to figure out that H has to be 60 because 120 plus 60 is 180. And then if we know that, then B has to be 60, F has to be 60, and D has to be 60. All right, so that's the idea. We'll get into it with the practice and examples to probably be a little more clear. All right, so here's our first kind of example try-it combination. I want to make sure you understand the vocabulary and the concept. Which angles have the same measure as angle 8? So angle 8 is right here. Okay, which is going to have the same measure. So we don't know what number it is, but you could make one up. We could say the measure of angle 8 was 40. What other ones are going to be 40? So go ahead and give that a try. Okay, you should get angle 6 because those are vertical angles. You should get angle 4. Those are corresponding. Angle 2. It's the vertical there. Right? It's not like there's so much vocabulary that we can get kind of overwhelmed by the vocabulary, but most of the time it's just which angles look like they're the same, right? The ones that are across from each other, those appear to be the same, and then we have our corresponding ones. Okay, and then which angles are supplementary to angle 8? Remember, supplementary means sum to 180 degrees. So they form a straight angle, 180 degree angle. Well, looking at angle 8, 7 definitely does, because those two make up, they make a straight line, right? So whatever 8 is, the measure of angle 8 plus the measure of angle 7 needs to equal that 180. So angle 7 will. So will 5, since those form a straight line. And then we know that the value of angle 1 and the value of angle 3, the measures of those, are the same as the measure of angle 5 and 7. So they're also going to be supplementary. If you take the measure of angle 3, if you take the measure of angle 1, you're going to get 180 degrees. All right, now I think this should help us a little bit. It gets a little bit more concrete here. So example 2, find unknown angle measures. In the figure, A is parallel to B. That means is parallel to. A is parallel to B. So that's like this line A, line B, they're parallel. What is the measure of angle 4 and the measure of angle 5? Okay. Well, we're told here that this is 99 degrees. So that's actually all we need to be given to figure out every other angle in this picture. But we were not asked to do that. So let's look at where angle 4 is. Angle 4 is right here. This 99 degree angle corresponds with angle 4. Right? Remember, you can flip back over to see that vocabulary word. It means they're kind of in the same spot, just like moved down, if you like slid it down. So they're on the same side of the transversal. And then they're both above whatever parallel line they're connected to. So what we have with corresponding angles is that they are congruent, which means that the measure of angle 4 is also 99 degrees because corresponding angles are congruent. Okay. And then, all right, well, what about angle 5? Angle 5 is different. It's not corresponding. Let's just look about its relationship with angle 4. Looking at that, I see that the measure of angle 4 plus the measure of angle 5 are going to need to equal 180 degrees. since angle 4 and angle 5 are supplementary. They form a line, right? They form a line, a straight line. And we just found that the measure of angle 4 is 99 degrees. So to find the measure of angle 5, I just need to kind of solve this equation. I have the measure of angle 5 plus 99. So I'm going to get the measure of angle 5 by doing 180 minus 99, which will be 81. So that means this is 81 degrees, this is 99 degrees, which checks out because 81 plus 99 is 180 degrees. So they would form a straight line, a straight angle. All right, and now we're going to look at one more example, this time with variables. So here we see that line A is parallel to line B. What is the value of x? Okay, so I see 59 degrees here. This angle is 59 degrees. Okay, that means this angle is also 59 degrees, angle 6, because those are corresponding angles. Okay, so what is the value of x? Well, in my picture, these two angles form a straight line. That means they're supplementary. Their values are going to sum to 180 degrees. So I can add x plus 12 plus 59, and that's going to equal 180. Because this angle and this angle are supplementary, meaning they sum to 180 degrees. Okay, and then like we've been doing the past 2 days, we can solve this equation. So go ahead and do that. Okay, and you should get x equals 109. Going back to my picture, okay, that means x is 109. So I'm going to do 109 plus 12. That gives me 121. So this angle is 121 degrees. This angle is 59 degrees. That checks out because 121 plus 59 is equal to 180. So we know we are correct.